So good afternoon. My name is Vincent, and the fact that you're here means you probably received an email from me giving you the link right to the online class. So my name again, it's Vincent Wong. You can just call me Vincent, or if you are not comfortable calling me the first name, you can just call me Sir. And you can reach me at this email, vwong@centennialcollege.ca. That is the primary way of communication with me. You might find my phone number somewhere on the college website, but don't call me. I don't actually have the phone. The phone is at the office, right? Like I'm not going to be able to um, pick it up. And so emailing me is the quickest way to reach me. I reply email very, very quickly. Usually you will hear back from me sometimes right away or within an hour, as long as like I'm, awake. If you don't hear back from me after a day, that means I did not receive your email. I will always reply your email, okay? And if you don't get a reply from me for more than a day, that means I didn't get it. There are a couple of reasons for this. Sometimes there's a glitch in the system, and sometimes you might send the email to the wrong person. There's more than one Vincent at the college, and so if you don't hear back from me for more than a day, just send the email again, and I will get back to you as soon as I receive it. Also, when you are emailing me, please specify which section you are in. Um, so tell me you're from the biology course, but then I teach multiple sections of the biology, right? So you tell me you are from section 202. That is your section code. It's important, especially if you are asking me related to your grades and stuff like that, that I know which section you're from, right? So I can pull that information out, quickly. And thank you for everyone who's like participating in the chat, introducing yourself. That is wonderful. If during class you need to stop me, if you have questions, you can use the raise hand button and unmute to ask the question. Or if you're more comfortable, you can type the question in the chat box. And if you don't want everybody to see your question for whatever reason, you can also private message me. There will be opportunities for interaction throughout class. Sometimes I would ask questions and then you can type the answer in the chat. So make sure you know where the chat button is, okay? If this is the first time using Zoom, there should be like a ribbon at the bottom of the screen. And on that ribbon, you will see multiple things. You see like a mic icon, a video icon, and then there should be a box for chat, and you just click on that, and type away. Like I said, everything will be recorded, and if you need closed captioned, I have turned on that function as well. Sometimes people find it easier if you can read along, to what I'm saying. So if you need that, it's available for you. Now, this is the first class, so I want to go through some basic information with you. It's gonna take about almost half an hour. All right, so just bear with me, and feel free to ask questions along the way. Now, if you haven't already done so, please log on to eCentennial, and I can post a link in the chat box for you. Okay, I'll do that right now. Okay, so that is in the chat box. That link is it will take you to our course homepage, right? At Centennial College, we have two systems. It's a little bit confusing for new students, so let me explain to you briefly. We have something called My Centennial. My Centennial is where you do your tuition payment, where you look at your timetable. It's more like administrative kind of stuff. For learning platform, we have the eCentennial. Okay, sometimes people call it D2L or Brightspace. It means the same thing. Okay, the eCentennial is where you will be getting your course information, your course notes. You will also be taking evaluations on eCentennial. Right? So when you need to do a test, do a quiz, you will log on to eCentennial. And also, you will be submitting your assignments through eCentennial as well. So for my course, for the biology course, everything that you need is already made available online. Okay, all the notes are there, all the assignments are there. Like, don't start doing the assignment today. Okay, like wait for me to explain it first. But you know, if you feel like you can move ahead a little bit, you want to read ahead, you want to see the notes for next couple of lessons, you can do that, right? Because all the notes are posted there already. Now, I try not to send you too many emails because I know you guys must have received a lot of email from school already, right? So I will be posting announcement, right? And you can see the announcement under news item when you log onto the course homepage. And I will post announcement a couple times a week, okay? Usually after a class, I will tell you, okay, so this is what we did, and this is the link for the recording. And then this is what you should prepare for next class. Right? So I'll update you that way. And if it's really important stuff, like if there is a test coming up, then I will send you an email. Now, like I said, the fact that you're here means you probably received my email, right? Some people don't know this, but you can actually set it up so that your school email, your Centennial email, can forward to your personal email. Okay, so that way you don't. Some people find it easier to not have to check multiple times. We meet twice a week, every Tuesday and Thursday at 12:30 to 2:20. Time is really tight, okay? We usually I definitely start right at 12:30 on the dot, and usually we would take all the way to 2:20. We'll have like a 5-minute break in between, but do plan to stay for the whole duration of the class. But I know you guys might have other commitments in life, right? You might have to I don't know, like go to work or take care of your kids, whatever the case. If you cannot make it to class, that's okay. I mean, you don't really have to let me know, but you could if you want. You can email me and let me know. But everything will be posted online after, right? So you can watch the recordings. What's really important is whether you come to class like during the allotted time or you watch the recording after, that doesn't really matter. Of course, I encourage you to come to the live class so you can ask questions. We will do practice quiz questions together, right? So it's more of an interactive experience, right? But it's also okay if you watch the recording later, right? What is not okay is just to read the notes on your own and then hope for the best on the test, right? Those are the students who tend not to do so well in the course. Even if you have taken biology before, right, it's important to watch the recordings, to come to class, and prepare yourself accordingly, right? If you pay all this money to be in this program, you want to get a good grade. So once you are on the course homepage, right? You check the news item, and this is basically what I sent you, right? You guys are here. That means you know about the Zoom link. It is the same link for every class. Okay, you can just bookmark that link and then use it for every class. It's not going to be a new one every time. Just use the same one. All right. There are no textbook in the course. You don't have to buy it. We'll just be using an online textbook for reference, and you can click on it to see what it is. But I'll show you another way to get to the textbook in a bit. There is my email, and here are some quick buttons for you to click on to get to different places. Okay. So the first thing you should download is the weekly schedule. Right? So if you click on that, it will take you to this file. It's too small to see off the screen, so I have like a bigger printout here. Okay, this is important to have a copy because it tells you when things are happening. Right. So like I said, we have class every Tuesday and Thursday, 12:30, and then you will have your first quiz on September 21st. Okay, that's a Thursday. You still have to come to class when we have a quiz. Okay, we will still have quiz. We'll still have class during our regular class time, and then you will be completing the quiz, outside of class time on that day. So let me tell you a little bit about the evaluations. And again, stop me if I'm talking too fast. or if you need clarification. The course is separated into 2 units. Okay, Unit 1 covers lecture 1 to lecture 5. You can look at the topics later. And then there will be 2 quizzes. Okay, Quiz 1 and Quiz 2. They will be 10% each, so that makes up 20%. There is going to be a test number 1, that's 20%. And then there will be a lab, okay? Lab 1, which is 10%. You don't have to go to the campus to do the lab. The lab is an online lab, okay? We will explain more about the lab as we get closer to the lab day. If you go back to the schedule, you can see the lab is due on October 5th. I will introduce the lab to you on October 3rd. It's a very simple assignment. Okay, most people do quite well on it. Okay, so there's no need to start too early. We'll get to it later on in the course. And then that's it for Unit 1. As for Unit 2, we will have Lecture 6 to Lecture 10. Then you will have quiz number 3 and 4. Those will be 10% each as well. And then you will have test number 2, which is 20%. And then there is going to be a second lab, which is worth 10% as well. There is no final exam. There are only 2 major evaluations, okay? Like test 1 for the first half and test 2 for the second half. Which means after the first test, I will not be testing you about lecture 1 to lecture 5 anymore. Okay, you can forget all about it. You can burn the notes, okay? We start fresh in the second half. Test 2 will only be on lecture 6 to lecture 10. Does anybody have any question about how the grades are broken down? Wonderful. So on the day of the test or the quiz, on the day of the quiz or the test, it will be available from 6 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. Okay, that's the window during which you will have access to the quiz. You must complete the quiz during this time. Okay, afterwards it's going to be gone forever, right? Okay, so usually a quiz is about 40 minutes and a test is about 70 minutes. I will give you all these details later on. Does someone have a question? I see, yeah, you had your mic and mute. No question? Okay, that's fine. Justine asked, are assignments not graded? Oh, the lab is the assignment. Yeah, I mean, like in your other courses, you might have other assignments, like you might have math assignments. But for my course, the lab is the assignment, basically. Okay. So like I said, the test is about 70 minutes, and I'll tell you the exact detail later on when we get closer to test dates. So what that means is you can do it first thing in the morning, okay, or you can do it later in the evening. But what happens is once you start the quiz or test, the timer will not stop. Okay, so in the past, people made a mistake. They start the quiz at like 10 a.m. Okay, and then they do 15 minutes of it, and they're like, oh, this is too difficult. I'm not ready for it. I need to study more. And then they exit, they close the browser, and then they do more studying, and then they try to do it again in the evening, but the timer didn't stop, right? So by the time they try to log back in, it's over. The quiz is done, right? So when you do your quiz, once you start, you have to finish it in one sitting. So make sure that you are in a place where there will be no distraction, and you're going to be able to focus for the duration of the evaluation. All right. I mean, sometimes things happen. If you lose connectivity or something like that, it's not a big deal. You can just email me, and then I will take a look at your log history. And you know, if nothing looks suspicious, then I will let you retake it. Okay. I'm a pretty easygoing person. Like I try to help you succeed as best as I can. So, you know, if you run into these kind of technical difficulties, it's okay. Don't panic. Okay. Like most of the time, if it's within reason, I will let you retake the quiz. What's not within reason? Well, if you have an internet outage every time we have an evaluation, then that's a little bit suspicious, right? Then, yeah, I might not allow you to retake it. Another thing is this. Let me go back to the course homepage. 1 second here. When you do the evaluations, we have something called the lockdown browser. Okay, so I'll post an announcement about this later, but I just want to show you where it is. Okay, so if you go to content, and then if you go to useful information, okay, content, and then useful information, there is something called about lockdown browser. Do you guys know what that is? Let me just do a quick poll. If you have heard of lockdown browser or use it before, please choose A. If you never used it or heard of it before, please choose B. You should be able to see a poll that pops up on your screen. If you don't see a poll, it's probably just because of the machine you're using. Okay, for some users, they're not able to see it. Okay, so most of you have not heard of lockdown browser. So let me explain to you what that means. Okay. In our program, most of the courses, so not just me, right? Your chemistry, your math, and maybe some other courses that you're taking, we use the lockdown browser. So it's a software that you have to download and install on your computer. Okay, so you have to do it. The instruction is going to be in this file, and I will create a link to show you where it is. Okay, the instruction. So you download it, you install it, and basically when you take the test, it will lock your browser. Right, so you are not able to do an internet search. You are not able to copy and paste things from your computer. You are not able to do screenshot. So all those things are essentially locked down, right? So that just makes sure that you are not, copying things and then putting it into, like ChatGPT or something and finding the answer, right? So it's a way to maintain a level playing field for all the students to make sure that we are maintaining our academic integrity. Okay, so there will be a chance for you to practice using lockdown browser for a practice quiz. That doesn't count for grades, right? Just making sure that you will install it ahead of time, that you are able to familiarize yourself with the interface before you actually do the test. Does anybody have any question about that feature? Okay, now when you install the lockdown browser, when you look at the document, there's a feature that says proctoring, okay, where you will need a webcam, and then it will be like recording you during the test. I am not using that in my course. Okay, some of your other teachers might be using that, but for me, I'm not using that. Okay, I will only be using the lockdown feature, the one that locks your browser. Okay, the webcam component, it's not going to be happening for this course. Okay, you will know what I mean when you read the instructions on how to install it. So you want to get that done earlier rather than later. Okay, so that is that. Now, in terms of the kind of questions that you will be seeing on the evaluations, we will have our standard multiple choice questions. These are 1 mark each, pretty standard stuff. It's knowledge-based question. Which of the following is an example of an enzyme, right? So you pick and choose. It's knowledge-based. There's no problem solving involved, right? Straightforward stuff. Majority of the questions will be that. There will be some multi-select questions. These are 2 marks each, and these questions have more than 1 correct answers. So you might have to choose 2 answers, 3 answers, whatever the case. In order to get 4 marks, you have to have all the correct answer selected. Okay, and then there will be application questions. These are 1 mark each. That requires you to, as the name suggests, apply what you have learned. So take what you've learned in class, apply it in a new situation. And we will be practicing some of these application questions during class. And then there might be some written response, okay? Open response question, we can say it, where you have to type answers, okay? And those are usually like 3 or 4 marks, all right? I want to bring up this this next point. It's very important. Listen carefully, okay? It is okay to use your notes during the biology test. Okay, I'm just talking about my course. Okay, other teacher might have other rules. I don't know. Okay, but for my course, it's okay to use your notes. Okay, but I would suggest you to also study beforehand. Study the test as if you were doing the test in an in-person setting. Okay, so memorize the stuff, learn the stuff properly, and then instead of having like your whole binder in the during the test and flipping through the notes to find the answers, it's best to just have like a summary sheet. Okay, I suggest like one piece of paper, front and back, to put some like key stuff, things that is like particularly difficult to understand, things that you have trouble memorizing. Just have like a reference sheet, a help sheet, right, next to you, to help you during the test. It's okay. That is not cheating. Okay. In fact, there's no way for me to guarantee you guys are not using your notes, right? So when I designed the question assuming that you will have access to your notes. Okay. So don't you don't have to put away everything. Of course you could. It's your choice. Okay. Like I'm not forcing you to use your notes, but I just want you to know, using your notes, creating a help sheet for biology, it's okay. It's not cheating. In fact, I encourage you to do it. Okay, it may give you a little bit of of a of a relief, right? Knowing that you could do that. Now, before I move on to the next thing. Does anyone have any question at all about anything I've said so far? Okay, so Tahib asks, where can we find the lockdown browser? Yep, I will post an announcement afterwards and give you a link to get it, but it's under content, useful information, and then about lockdown browser. That's going to be the instruction on how to install it and everything. Okay. All right, a couple other things. Under useful information, you will also find a course outline. You want to get a copy of this as well, okay? This is like a legal document between the college and you about the course that you're taking. Let's say you finish our program and you decided to go to another college, and then they also have biology, and you're like, but I already took biology at Centennial. Can I like skip this biology? You might be able to, right? You show them the course outline, and then they will evaluate it and say, oh, it's similar enough, so you will be exempt from it, okay? So make sure you download a copy of it and keep it safe on your computer. There are a few other things here that you might find useful. There's an open source textbook that I was talking about. There's a FAQ that you can look at. And then there is a tutorial recording here. So if you click on that, it will take you to this page. You know, I have a morning class and an afternoon class, and they're both online. So today is the orientation, which is what I'm doing right now, and then we'll be starting on lecture 1. And I will post a link to the recording after class. Right? You guys will be looking at the afternoon one, right? I mean, you can watch the morning one too. They are really the same thing, but this is probably you know, more relevant because you know, I'll be answering the questions that is pertaining to your class, right? So it's not there yet, but it will be after class, right? So this is where you will go find all the recordings. BB asked, do we have access to notes for all the quizzes and tests? I mean, if you print it out, you will have access to it. But like during the quiz, you won't be able to find it online, right? Because your browser is locked down, right? Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Hi, Vincent. Sorry, I guess I should have phrased it differently.
That's okay.
I meant, so when you said that we can have like a summary sheet and all of that,
Yeah.
right? I was just wondering, is that like, can we use that summary sheet is that how it's gonna be for all of the quizzes and the tests? Like we
Yeah,
have
yeah,
for
for sure.
everything.
Right. Yep.
Oh,
So
okay.
like you can use a summary sheet. Like, I mean, you can use your whole binder as well. Like, I don't, it doesn't matter to me, right? But from my experience, if like you're not gonna have a lot of time to flip through the binder unless you know exactly where things are, right? It's much easier to create that help sheet and memorize as much as you can, study as you would for an in-person evaluation, right? That's what I meant, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And yep, okay, great. And also, what was another thing I was gonna say? I forgot, lost my train of thought. Anyway, it'll come back to me. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, if you go to content, you will also see the lecture tab. Yeah, lecture tab. And you will see all the lectures here. Like I said, all the notes are available online. If you want to print them all out at once, feel free to do that. I'm gonna go into lecture 1 here, and you will see that there are 2 folders within each lecture. There is the lecture notes, and then there's the study resources. Within the lecture notes, you will have the PowerPoint available to you. For those of you who like to take notes on the computer as I teach you, you can use that. There is also the PDF if you want to print it out. This is a printer-friendly version, 3 slides per page. So it cut down the cost substantially. And excuse me, lastly, we have the study guide. And you also want to have a copy of the study guide because we'll be filling in the answers during class as well. We won't have time to do all the questions in the study guide, so the rest you will have to do on your own, but I will be posting the answer key to the study guide at the end of each week, so you can check your own answers, all right? In the study resources, we have a couple things here. Supplementary reading, you can click on it and it will take you to the open source textbook. The link for each of the lecture is different, okay? Like it will take you directly to, for example, this week we're learning about scientific method. So, it will take you to the page that talks about the process of science. Next time we'll be talking about macromolecules, then that link will take you to the specific part of the textbook, okay? The textbook is just for reference only. You are not responsible for the stuff that we have not talked about. The textbook goes into a lot more detail than I do in class. So, you will only be tested on the stuff we cover in the PowerPoint as well as the study guide. Okay, this is only for your reference. Other study resources that are available to you include video resources. Okay, so rather than going online and finding videos on YouTube yourself, I've done that for you. Okay, I found relevant information on the internet for like key concepts, key topics that we learn. Like we're gonna be talking about Rady and Pasteur experiment, and if you want to watch an animation on it, right, you can just go to the video resource here, click play. You can even leave comments. If you found a better video and you want to let us know, you can do that. Okay, so that saves you some time, and also these videos have been vetted by me, right? So I know that they are kind of relevant to what we're doing. Just like the textbook, sometimes these videos cover more things than you need to know. So extra content you will not be responsible for. Other studying resources, what else do we have? We have okay, so here is a self quiz. You will have self quiz for all the lectures. Okay, these don't count for marks. You can just do them as many times as you want. And for the first one, I make it so that it requires you to use the lockdown browser. Okay, so this is a good way to get familiarized with the software, right? Install the lockdown browser, make sure it works on your computer, and use this self quiz to see if it works. Okay, basically, if you have trouble installing the lockdown browser, you will have to contact the school IT. They are the ones who will be able to help you with it. I don't have the expertise to help you with the installation process. So you want to get this done earlier rather than later. You don't want to find out on the day of the quiz that it is not working on your computer, right? Okay, that would be unfortunate. And then sometimes I would put extra references, right, for things that are particularly difficult to understand, and you will find it in this study study resource. Right? There's crosswords for you to do as well if you want to practice on the vocabularies, learning the new terms and all that stuff. I do want to have a word of caution about the self quiz. Um, people in the past they got perfect on the self quiz. It's not a lot of questions, by the way. It's just like 7 or 8 questions, sometimes more if the lecture is longer. But people get perfect on the self quiz, and then they do the actual quiz, and then they don't do so well, and then they're like, this is not fair. The self quiz questions are easier than the actual quiz questions. Okay, so don't get a false sense of reassurance when you get perfect on the self quiz. You still have to study more, right, to prepare for the actual thing. Now, having said that, I don't want you to get like too overwhelmed by the quiz and the test. They are not like impossible. Like, I am not trying to fail anyone here. The quiz and the test are very reasonable. Okay, and a lot of the stuff in the quiz and test we will be practicing during the class as well. Okay, I think when people don't do well, it's mostly because they are not studying properly. What I mean by that is, some people, they think it's an online course and they have access to their notes and they get a false sense of security, right? Okay, don't think of it as having your notes. Okay, it's okay to have the cheat sheet, but you still have to study as if you write this test in person. Okay, if you have that mentality and you study like that, you should be okay. All right, but people usually like they don't really fail. The ones who fails are the ones who don't come to class, and then they don't put in the effort. Generally, people do reasonably well in the course. I think that's everything I wanted to tell you. Does anybody have any question for me before we move on? Anything at all? No? Okay, that's great. So let's get started with our lecture. All right. So I hope you have a chance to download the lecture notes, but just in case you don't, let me quickly put the link in the chat box. Okay, there is the link to the lecture notes, and if you're doing this right now, you probably want the first one because you'll be able to type notes in it. In terms of the lecture, I'm gonna be switching back and forth, right, between this and then I have like a virtual blackboard, and then I'll be writing notes. So you will need to have some paper, okay? Don't just sit here and watch me talk. Okay? You're gonna fall asleep for sure, and it's not a very engaging experience, right? So have notes, write things down, ask questions, participate, and it would just be like we're in person. I hope. So here we go. We will be starting with scientific method. So this is introductory biology. It's probably a good idea to understand what biology is. The standard definition of biology is the scientific study of living things. Scientific study of living things. Now, within biology, there are many different disciplines, right? We have anatomy, for example. So anatomy basically is what is it called? Okay. So you study the human body. You look at an organ. The organ has different structures in it. What do we call this? What do we call that? That's basically anatomy. Okay. Physiology. Physiology is another branch of biology. This is what does it do? What does it do? Right? So like the heart has valves in it. What is the function of this valve? What is the function of that valve? That would be physiology. Next semester, you will be taking a course called pre-anatomy and physiology. Right? So you'll be learning about the human bodies. You will learn about the names of different organs and learn about their function and structure. Okay. I also teach that course, so we might see each other again next semester. There's also histology. Histology is the study of cells and tissues. This is an example of a histology slide. You take the sample, usually some kind of organ, you slice it very thinly, you stain them with colors, and then you look at it under the microscope. Okay. Anybody want to take a wild guess at what this might be? This is an organ. Okay, which organ is this? Just for fun. Okay, wild guess. You can type in the chat box. You can unmute and tell me. The key is to participate. What do you think this is? Okay, we have brain, we have liver. Great. Anyone else?
It looks like an artery of some sort.
Artery of some sort.
Like
Very
a-
nice. Some kind of cell. Okay, great guesses. Great guesses. But this is the kidney. Okay, this is the kidney. And you're like, how am I supposed to know that, right? It's just for fun, okay? No worries. This is not on the test. But next semester, after you take the anatomy and physiology, right? You look at this, you see DCT here, you know right away. Oh, that's the kidney. Okay, so that's something to look forward to. All right. And then there's genetics. Genetics is something that we will actually do in this class. It's the study of heredity, right? How genetic information is passed from the parent to the kids. So let's say you have blue eyes, your spouse have brown eyes. What's the probability that the child will have blue eyes? Okay. Let's say you have dimples, your spouse does not have dimples. What's the probability that your kids will have dimples? Those are the kind of genetic questions we'll be doing later on in the course. Is the favorite topic of everybody every year? Okay, because it's just like so much fun, right? Like I don't have dimples, my spouse don't have dimples. How come the kids have dimples, right? Like, should I be worried, right? Should I be, concerned? Like, are these my kids, right? So we'll be looking at the genetics behind uh, um, things like that. In any case, there are many different branches of biology. Some you will do next semester, some you will do this semester. So biology is the scientific study of living things. Then it makes sense to kind of talk about what living things are, right? I mean, you are probably pretty good at telling if something is living or not. At least I would hope you can tell. You see a zebra, you're like, oh, that's living, right? You see a tree, you know it's living. And then teddy bear, dolls, skateboards, these things are non-living. Right? So we have a pretty good notion as to what's alive and what's not. Right? But things are not so clear-cut in many cases in science. And you can't always fit things into one category versus the other. Many cases, it's somewhere in between. So take virus, for example. This is something that scientists has been, debating whether to classify it as living things or non-living things, right? The virus has the potential to reproduce. Right? It can make copies of itself, right? Of course, all living things does that, but only after infecting a host. Okay, so they could do it, but not on their own, right? Shouldn't living things have the autonomy to reproduce themselves, right? If it requires help from an other organism in order to copy themselves, then maybe it's not really a living thing, right? So sometimes the point is some things don't really fit into one thing or the other. Okay, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day whether virus is considered as living or non-living. All it matters is it makes our life miserable, right, when there is a new virus out there, right? But this is just to illustrate the fact that not everything is so clear cut in science. Life takes many different forms. Here is just some examples here. We have like the poison dart frog. We have the Portuguese man of war, which is like poisonous stingray, sorry, jellyfish. We have this kind of salamander looking thing is called the oxalotl. They all look very different, okay? However, at the very core of living things, there is a set of characteristics that they all share. Right? So we're going to look at 7 characteristics that are shared by all living things. The first characteristic is order. Okay? Even though they all look very different, but they all exhibit complex but ordered organization. What that means is, if you look at an animal, any animal, think of any animal in your head, they will usually have some kind of symmetry, right? Left-right symmetry. We are like that. We are symmetrical, right? Down the middle, right? Something like a starfish is symmetrical on multiple lines, right? Not just left-right symmetry, right? You can cut it like in multiple ways, and you can see symmetry there, right? So that's an example of order organization. If you see a seashell, right, the spiral, the inside, that is mathematical organization, right? Fun fact, if you measure the distance from the center to the edge of each spiral, right, and you find the ratio, it always comes up to be the same number. I mean, it's quite amazing, right? The seashell did not go to math class, but it's able to come up with these very elegant patterns and numbers for the ratio, right? So that's organization, right? Petals, right? Certain species of flowers, their petal numbers is multiple of 3, 5, or 7. And these kind of organization don't just exist on the organism level. If you zoom in and look at the cellular level, which is what this is looking at the stem of a flower. You can see it's very well organized inside at a microscopic level as well. When we look at the level of organization, we actually can start at the very, very small scale, and we can see how this organization continues to build up until you get to the entire organism. Okay, so at the very, very small scale, at the lowest level, we have atoms. Okay? If you don't know what an atom is, that's okay. We will talk more about it next class. But for those of you who might be familiar with atoms, maybe you can give me some examples. What are some atoms that we have that are found in the body? I will give you an example to start you off. Carbon. There's a lot of carbon in our body. We are carbon-based organism. Are there any other atoms that you know of that is found in the body? Anyone? Okay, we have hydrogen, very good. Anyone else? Oxygen from Justine, anyone else? One more, maybe just one more. Oh, nitrogen from is it RJ? I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly. So these are great, right? Those are atoms, and sometimes atoms can come together to form molecules. So example of molecules would be like H2O, right? There are other molecules in the body that we need, like C6H12O6, that is sugar. Okay, this is water. And again, you don't have to memorize it. We're going to be learning about these things as we go progress through the course. Okay, and you'll be learning about these in chemistry as well. These are small molecules. They only have a few atoms, but then there are really, really big ones. So example of big molecules would be like DNA. That's really, really big, right? Proteins. Okay, those are big molecules. We are talking about thousands and thousands of atoms in them. And then we have organelles, cells, and eventually we will have the entire organ, which belongs to an organ system. And then you have the organism. Okay, so our first biology course in the program, the one that you're taking right now, we will start at the atom level next class, next week rather, and then we will work our way through to the tissue level. By the time we get to lecture 10, we will be learning about tissue. And then next semester, you will start learning the organ system, and the organism. Right, so that's how we're going to be progressing. Next semester is mostly about the human body. This semester, the biology is more about what's happening within the cell. And there's a lot of things that are going on inside the cell. and many of which is actually very relevant to things that are happening around the world, as you will see. Okay, so first characteristic of living things, order. And it's not just order and complexity on the organism level. That complexity continues to exist all the way down to the molecular level. A second characteristic of living things is the ability to maintain homeostasis. Okay, homeostasis is to have an internal balance. Internal balance. Okay, despite changes in the environment, okay, you are able to maintain an internal balance. That's called homeostasis. If it's cold outside, if it's hot outside, your body will have ways to keep it at 37 degrees Celsius, right? That's one example of homeostasis. Okay. Many processes in the body happens to maintain homeostasis. Take sodium level, salt level, right? You just had a big family-sized bag of chips. You ate it all in one sitting, right? Your sodium level in the blood is going off the roof. Your body will have to get rid of those extra sodium to keep it low, right? So bringing it back down, that's homeostasis. It's 40 degrees outside today. You are waiting for the bus half an hour. The bus is not coming. You don't know what's going on. You're sweating excessively. You are losing a lot of sodium. So your body have to bring it back up, right? So too much sodium brings it back down. Not enough sodium, it brings it back up. All these things are happening to help you maintain homeostasis. So despite changes that are happening in the surrounding, either outside or inside the body, you have ways to keep things steady. The ways at which your body keeps it the same, we call those mechanisms. Okay, mechanism is just a fancy word of saying different ways, different methods, right? And the mechanism can be classified as physiological or behavioral. Okay, so physiological mechanisms are basically things your body does for you. You don't have to learn about it. You don't have to think about it. The body just do it, right? So if it's really, really hot outside, the sweating is meant to cool you down, right? That's a physiological mechanism. Nobody taught you how to sweat. Your body just does it by itself, okay? Behavioral mechanism would be something that you do to maintain the homeostasis. So if it's really hot, you might be like fanning yourself, right? You might be putting your ice cold cappuccino on your forehead to cool yourself off. These are things that you deliberately do, right? Those are examples of behavioral mechanism. What if it's really cold? If it's really cold outside, give me an example of a physiological mechanism. Minus 40 outside. So cold. What is an example of physiological mechanism? Okay, several people say shivering. Exactly, right? No one taught you how to shiver. Shivering is muscle contraction, generates heat, warms you up. That's physiological. What about behavioral? Minus 40 outside. Behavioral mechanism. Yeah, put on a jacket, right? Okay, otherwise you're gonna catch a cold, right? One of the biggest myths out there, probably, right? Put on a jacket, right? Get something hot to drink, right? All these are example of behavioral. So we are warm-blooded, right? Which means we maintain a core body temperature of 37 degrees Celsius. But something like a lizard, they can't do that. They don't have a way of regulating body temperature. So they rely on external factors to keep them warm or cool them off. So when it's cold, the lizard will go on a rock and take a sun bath to warm themselves up. So what do you think? Do you think this is an example of physiological or behavioral? Choose A if you think is physiological. Choose B if you think is behavioral. Okay? The lizard taking a sun bath on the rock. If you're not sure, you can choose C. What kind of mechanism is this? Okay, thank you for participating. Most of you got it right. This is a behavioral mechanism, right? The lizard has to climb on the rock and stay there in the sun deliberately, right? To get warm, right? It's something that it does rather than the body does it for it, right? If you have a paper cut, you're bleeding, your body will stop the bleeding. That's physiological, okay? The dog is very hot, is like panting, sticking his tongue out, right? Cooling itself off. That would be an example of behavioral, okay? So hopefully that makes sense to you. In case I've lost you, we are talking about characteristics of living things, right? First one is there is some kind of order. Second one is the ability to maintain homeostasis. Now let's take a look at the next one. Growth and development. Okay, I mean, we look very different now than we did when we first came into this world, right? We are much bigger. We have things now that we didn't have before as a baby, right? So we developed, we grow, right? We got bigger. And that's a common theme for all living things. For some living things, the development is much more drastic, the changes. Think of a butterfly. It looks very different in the adult form compared to the juvenile form, right? The caterpillar. But sometimes, the organism just looks bigger overall, not much change other than that. The point is it will go through some kind of growth and some kind of development. Now, all this growing and developing takes a lot of energy. So there must be a way for the organism to obtain energy. Okay, so most organisms would, animals anyways, animals they would get their energy from eating something. Okay, so something can be eating plant only. We call those herbivores. The name is not important. Some animals will eat other animals, right? We call them carnivores. And for fungus, they would grow on decaying matter, and they would break down the dying material and extract the energy from it. Right? For plants, they would get the energy directly from the sun. So there are different ways to obtain energy. But regardless how they obtain the energy, the end result is the same, right? You need to obtain it to support the growth and development and to sustain life. Next characteristic is the ability to respond to stimuli. Okay, so stimuli is plural. Singular is stimulus. A stimulus is basically a trigger in the environment. Okay, some of you might know what this is. This is called a Venus flytrap. The Venus flytrap grows on very acidic soil, and they are not able to absorb the nitrogen from the soil. So the only way to get the nitrogen, which is essential for growth, is to get it from bugs. Okay, so normally they would open up like this. Okay, and then when the bug lands on them, it touches one of these hair things. It will cause it to close. Okay, so the closing is in response to the trigger being the insect touching one of these hair things. Okay, so that's an example of response to stimulus. We have various reflexes that are similar. If you touch a sharp object or something that's hot, I mean not deliberately. If you touch a sharp object on purpose, like you're not gonna retract your hand, right? But if you accidentally touch a sharp object or a hot surface, your hand automatically moves away. That reflex is an example of response to stimulus. In fact, response to stimulus is closely related to maintaining homeostasis. When it's hot outside, you sweat. So the sweating is a response to the stimulus, the high temperature, as well as a way to maintain homeostasis. Okay? So again, things are not so clear cut, not necessarily this or that. Sometimes it can be multiple things at the same time. So order, homeostasis, growth and development, requirement of energy, response to stimulus. Those are 5 characteristics, and we have 2 more. Next one is reproduction, right? Organisms reproduce to make more of its own kind, right? That's how they make sure the species doesn't go extinct, right? Okay, so that's pretty self-explanatory. And then the last one here is the ability to adapt and evolve. I'm just going to read this to you first. Populations evolve over time in a way that makes them more adaptable to the environment. More adaptable means it will enhance the survival. Okay, it will make them better adapted to the environment so that they can reproduce more and have more offspring. That's basically what evolution is. So if you take a look at this hummingbird, it has a very long beak, right? So long time ago, maybe let's say on an island, there are hummingbirds with 3 kinds of beaks. Okay, they have short beaks, they have medium beaks, and then they have ones with like really long beaks. Okay, so the beak length is different, just like our height is different. Okay, it's just variation that exists within the population, right? And let's say the flower that they get the nectar from has a really deep pocket. Okay, that's a flower. And so, what does common sense tell you? Which one is going to be able to survive better if this is the only kind of flower that's on the island? Is it A, B, or C? Now, hopefully you are thinking about C, right? It's pretty obvious, right? Because it's able to reach the nectar really deep. These things that, they're not very good at. They're not going to reach it. They will probably not get enough food. So over time, what happens is these ones, the one with the long beak, they will have more food. They will be stronger. They will be able to find mates better. They will mate and have babies that look like them, right? So over many years, the population evolve so that you no longer have these ones. Do you understand? So individuals, this is very important to understand. Individuals do not evolve. Population does. Okay, people have this misconception. They think, like the bird A with the short beak, because it has the it sees the very deep pocket. So what happens is bird A is gonna make its beak longer and longer, and until it's able to get the nectar, right? So that's the wrong understanding of what evolution means, right? Evolution doesn't create new things out of individuals. Okay, it's the population that evolves. Same thing with the seahorse here is camouflaged, right, in the background. So maybe a long time ago they have seahorses that are different colors. I'm just making this up, okay? Like maybe they have like red ones, blue ones, orange one, green ones, whatever, right? But only the red one is able to blend into the background. So all the other ones get eaten, right, by predators, and the red one would survive. And they survive, they make more babies that looks like themselves. So the population went from very diverse with many different colors to now only the red one, right? Because that's the trait that caused them to blend in better. Does that make sense? Any question about what I've just explained? Okay, so let's try to apply it to a more tangible situation, right? Some people have difficulty visualizing this because like I can't observe evolution, some people say, and it's like it happened so long ago, I can't really understand it. But actually evolution happens I wouldn't say every day, but it happens quite rapidly for some instances, for some case. So can you give me an example of something that is happening right now in the world that is a great example of how evolution works? Okay. Something that you will read on the news almost every couple of weeks, every couple of months, you will read about it. And then that is actually an example of evolution. Someone was able to give me an example this morning. Just want to see if you guys can do the same. What are we talking about here? In medicine, I'm talking about, okay? What's the specific example in medicine that would be an example of evolution happening on a scale of, within months, within year? What have we been dealing with for the past 2-3 years, guys? That's right, the coronavirus and the vaccine. Excellent. Okay, so let's talk about this a little bit, just very briefly. Okay, so that you can see what we're learning is actually applicable in the real world. Right, it's not just like random stuff that you don't have to know. Right. Okay, so this is a very simplification of what's actually happening. So there is the coronavirus, and on the coronavirus they have these spike molecules. Okay, spike molecules. All right, so let's say some of them is red, and then they have different spike molecules. Okay, we're just gonna focus on the red ones for now. Okay? So when you get the vaccine, which I'll explain to you how that works later on in the course, but when you get the vaccine, you basically educate your immune system about the spike proteins. So you're like, hey, that's what the real coronavirus looks like, and they have these red little spikes on them. Let's make some antibodies that would attack them. So your body does that, and you just have to believe me. Antibodies are Y-shaped proteins, okay? So these are the antibodies, okay? Antibodies, and they are very good at recognizing their target, right? So when you do get the actual coronavirus and you already have your vaccine, the antibodies will tag these viruses with the red spikes on them. It will neutralize them, kill them off, and then you get very mild symptoms or no symptoms at all. Wonderful. However, viruses, they actually copy themselves. They reproduce very quickly. Okay, and one advantage of making copies very rapidly is you can introduce changes into your DNA, and we will learn more about it. Okay, and so what happens is, just by pure luck, pure fluke, right? There is some changes that occur, and what happens is it causes a subtle change in the spike proteins. So, instead of red, they are kind of pinkish now, right? So those antibodies that you make previously, they no longer work, right? So what this means is, let's say you are the one who have the virus, and then your virus mutated to this, pink version, okay? And then you sneeze out a bunch of viruses, right? And then someone else breathes it in, okay? So when you sneeze out, you will sneeze out some red ones and some pink ones, okay? So these red and pink ones will go into another person who is also vaccinated, but their antibodies will only kill off all the red ones, right? The pink one will now be able to live on, to survive better, and to reproduce, to make more babies that looks like themselves, right? So now that person gets really sick from the penguin. He or she sneezes. Now we have more penguin in the population. Infect another one. And before you know it, now we have a new variant of concern. That's what a new variant is. A new variant is basically a new mutation, right? That causes the virus to adapt better to the environment, right? To survive better. So that's basically evolution that is happening in real life. Okay, things that you observe and things that have real consequences. Okay. Anyway, I hope that makes sense. So those are the 7 characteristics of living things. Okay, I hope you are still with me after that. Now let's move on. The next part we are going to look at is scientific study. Right? So biology is the scientific study of living things, right? We already talked about what living things are. We talk about their characteristics. Let's move our focus to scientific study. What is the meaning of that? The word science is derived from the Latin word meaning to know. Right? A lot of science terms are derived from Latin or from Greek. That's where it all began. And you know, it's a way of understanding based on inquiry, based on asking questions. Okay, and humans are by nature curious. If you have a kid at home, you will know how curious we are, right? Okay, they ask you why every 5 minutes. Why this? Why is that? Why is this? Why is that? Right? So it is that curiosity that drives the process of science. There are two main scientific approaches that are used in science. We have what's called discovery science and hypothesis-driven science. We will only have enough time to cover discovery science today. Okay, for hypothesis-driven science, we will do on Thursday. Now, the two are not mutually exclusive. It's not like you do one or the other, right? They often work hand in hand, and together, right? It allows us to
Sorry.
discover new things and comes to conclusion. Yep, go ahead.
Sorry. So I have a question.
Sure.
Because while I was reading it yesterday, the thing was somehow confusing because is discovering science also the same thing as observation?
Yeah. So observation is a key component of discovery science, and I'm going to get to that in the next slide. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking. So, what is discovery science, right? It involves studying a system without changing it in any way. Okay, you are just observing. In the case of discovery science, you're not trying to manipulate anything. You're just looking at things and then seeing what's going on and recording it. Okay, so like you can observe global warming. You're not making changes to the system. You're just seeing the effects of global warming. That's one example. Okay, so when you make observations, the observation can be qualitative or quantitative. Okay, so let's start with qualitative observations. These are observations that we made with our senses. And we have 5 senses, right? Okay, we can see, we can smell, we can touch, so on and so forth, right? So these are descriptive observation. You are not making any measurements. You are not using numbers. When you use numbers, that would be quantitative. That's using numbers. Okay. Qualitative, it's no numbers. You're just using your senses. Our senses are sometimes limited, right? So we can use various tools to extend our senses. So we can use a microscope to see very small. We can use a telescope to see really far away. Okay, we can use a microphone to extend our hearing capability, right? And so on and so forth. So let's write down some examples of qualitative observations. Okay, so please take this note down with me. Qualitative observation. Okay, using our senses. I am very sorry. It's difficult to write on the computer. So if you have trouble reading my words, just let me know. I will be happy to tell you what it is that I'm writing. Okay. So qualitative observations using our senses. So let's start with sight. Okay, sight. Give me some examples of like what kind of observations can you make with your eyes? If you look at something, what can you tell? What can you tell about the thing using your eyes?
Like sight is just like, let me just say it's like a face value when you see things physically before you can give an explanation to that thing.
Okay, yeah, so you're just taking it at face value, or just looking at it, right? Okay.
Right.
So some of the things you might notice would be, some people are saying in the chat, shape, I saw color earlier, right? Describing the appearance, right? Those are very good. Size, yeah. Now texture is a different thing, right? Like, I mean, you can kind of have an idea. You look at something, you're like, oh, that looks smooth, but you don't really know until you use another senses, right? What other sense is that? What sense do you have to use to really tell the texture of something?
It's just like descriptive. It's like describing.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you have to describe it, but then you would have to use the touch, right? You would have to touch it to figure out whether it's different kind of texture. And what kind of descriptive word, how would you describe the texture? What are some good words for describing texture, guys?
Like when you feel.
Yeah, how does it feel? So what are examples? Okay, we have rough. What is it? Oh, you guys are typing so fast. Excellent. Fluffy. Okay, like a plush toy, right? Smooth, silky. Nice, right? Sharp, yeah. Okay, so all these are like touches. Very good. What's another one? Help me out. What's another sense that you have? Taste, that's right. Now you should not be tasting anything in the classroom, okay? I mean, we're in an online environment, which is fine. Like you're not gonna be you can taste anything in your house. It's not my business, okay? But when I teach the in person class, right? You'd be surprised, okay, that I have to tell these 18-year-old students like don't put that in your mouth, right? So tasting is usually not a thing that you should be doing in the lab unless specified by your teacher, okay? But yeah, how would we describe taste? Like it's sour. What else? Sweet, yeah. Bitter, very good. Anything else? Maybe two more. Salty, yeah. Sure, tangy. Tangy is kind of like sour, right? Okay. Spicy, whatever the case is. Okay, so taste. And I'm just looking for two more senses here. Please help me out. Yep, smell. Okay, what are some description for smell? And then someone said hearing as well. Very good. Description for smell, please. What does it smell like? How would you describe the smell of things? Putrid, foul. You guys are like English major. Very very nice words. Anything else? So how about something nice? Okay, give me something that smells like. How would you describe something that smelled nice? Flowery, sure. Right? Sweet. Okay. Pungent. Right? These are example of smell, right? Or like odorless, right? Now your first lab is gonna be involving these things. Okay, like you will have to use what you learned in lecture 1 to do well on the lab. So make sure you're familiar with some of these descriptors. Now, hearing is not. I mean, for us, we're doing cell biology, right? So we won't be using hearing so much in our observations, but this might be useful for someone who's like observing an animal or something. Okay, so as an example, the mating song. Okay, I'm not making this up. Some frogs they sing a song when it's mating season, okay? And the quality of the song will decide like how many mates you can attract. Right? So like if someone is studying that frog, they would be like listening to the patterns in the song, right? That would be part of like an observation. Okay, so these are qualitative, right? We are just using our senses. No numbers are involved. It's just what you see, what you feel, what you touch, so on and so forth. Okay, and the main problem with these qualitative observations is that they could be subjective. I mean, like what's really sweet to you could be really foul for me, right? Like an example is that is it called a body shop? I always get the name wrong. That place that sells all these very strong scented soap and stuff like that. Yeah, Bath and Body Works. That's right. I always get the name wrong. Okay, so like when we walk by that, my daughter would be like, "Oh, that smells so nice," and I'd be like, No, it doesn't. It gives me a headache, right? So like it's very subjective, right? It depends on the person, right? So when it comes to science, we want to be precise, um, but sometimes if it's subjective between two observers, then we cannot come to a consensus, right? So that's why we don't just make qualitative observations. We have to make quantitative observation as well, and that takes us to the next one. But before that, let's do an exercise, okay? And again, I invite all of you to participate. I was seeing some good participation, but some of you still haven't, type anything yet. Don't be shy, right? This is a safe space. Even if you're wrong, it's okay. It's about trying, right? So if I give you this picture on the test, and I'm like, give me 4 qualitative observations that you can make. What are you gonna write? Okay, 4 qualitative observation. Fire away. Okay? Give me some answers. You don't have to know what you're looking at, right? That's the whole point, right? Okay, because if you know what you're looking at, then you start to have these preconception about what it should be. Right? In fact, it's better when you don't know what it is. Okay, so people say it is long, oval shape, good. Gray in color, lots of them. Thick, yeah. It looks like it has a width to it, right? So pretty thick. Anything else? Yeah, it looks like it's kind of rough, right? And that's actually a good example because my morning class, they were telling me that they look like smooth. Okay, so I mean, you really don't know, right? Because the texture is not something you can just decide by looking at it, right? Something can look very, very smooth, but when you touch it, it could be a very, very coarse, right? So it's a subjective thing without actually touching it. So I wouldn't put that on the test, but I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, so Patrice says they look like they're reproducing, right? Okay, so I assume you probably figure out these are bacteria, right? And it looks like they're splitting, they're reproducing. Yeah, sure. Okay, reproducing. Does it make sense? If I give you a picture on the test and I ask you to give me qualitative observations, are you able to do it? I certainly hope so. All right. So the next thing is quantitative observations. Okay. Quantitative observations involves measurements. Okay? You have to use some kind of things to measure, and we can measure things using various ways. We can use a ruler, we can use a scale, right? We can use a graduated cylinder, right? You might remember that. If you don't know what that is, you will learn it in chemistry class. So there are different ways to measure things. So let's give some example of quantitative observations. So I mentioned length, right? Height, mass. What else? What else do we have? Sure, width. Anything that doesn't involve measurements of distance. Volume, excellent. What else? Maybe just like 2 or 3 more. Yeah, weight and mass are similar in context. Giselle, anyone else? Like, I mean, look at this picture and look at this picture, right? Some people say lots of them. And then here, would you say is a lot of them? Like not a lot, right? Okay, so we can maybe use density. Like how many, right? You guys are saying the quantity, right? How many within a particular space, right? Okay. Yeah, speed is another good one, right? How fast, right? So I mean that the speed depends what context you're talking about. If you're observing an animal, how fast is it running at? That would be the speed of the cheetah, for example. You can also be describing the speed that they are splitting, right? That they are reproducing. Okay, so how fast, the rate of reproduction, the speed at which they double, right? So that's something that's important when we look at how fast a particular virus or bacteria is spreading through a population. Okay, and you guys have some good ones. Okay, distance, area, excellent. Okay, the point is these are observations that are made with numbers, and when you do it with numbers, it's not subjective. It shouldn't be subjective. Okay, like unless you don't know how to use a ruler, but if everybody's using the same ruler and you're measuring the same thing, you should have the same results, right? So these are more objective. Okay, whereas qualitative, they are more subjective. Okay, so quantitative observation involve, I wouldn't say math necessarily, but like involves numbers. Okay, involves numeric values. Okay, if that makes more sense for you. Is it Honey Lu? I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Oh, thank you. Okay. So now here is looking at bacteria under a microscope, and sometimes, I mean, like you can't really physically put a ruler under the microscope all the time. Okay, we actually will be doing that for the lab, but like what I mean is like it's not practical to stick your ruler under the microscope and physically measure how long a bacterium is, right? Like that's not something that you can do. So instead, we sometimes have these scales that are etched into the field so that we can see. So this particular line is 10 micrometer. That's a fancy U. Okay, that is micrometer. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, and that's okay if you don't know, you will learn this in math later. 1 meter has 1 million micrometer. Okay, so if you look at this bacterium, right? How long do you think this is? If this white line is 10 micrometer, how long do you think that is? Right, 5, right? I would say about 5 micrometer, right? It's not super accurate, right? Because this is just estimating, but still, it's less subjective, right? Okay, like if you ask everybody in the class to come up with a number, I am surprised if anyone come up with a number that's bigger than 10, right? Because clearly this is shorter than the white line, right? And so it's going to be within a limited range. Are we together? Okay, thank you. Now I'm sorry. Like usually I give you a break. I promise I do. But because today we have the orientation, right? Like I was talking too much at the beginning. So it takes into some of our class time. So I'm just gonna push through, okay? For the last 20 minutes, and cover the next part. Okay. The next part is confusing for a lot of people. Okay. So please pay extra attention and ask questions when I am not making sense. Right? It's my job to make sure that you actually understand what I'm saying. Now, in discovery science, I told you we make observations. It doesn't matter if you're doing qualitative or quantitative. The point is you make a bunch of observations, okay, and you record the observations, okay. The next step is to take a look at all these observations, and assuming you're observing the same thing, so all these observations are going to be related to one another, right? You're going to take a look at all these observations, and then you're going to try to identify any trends. You're going to try to identify patterns. Okay, are there things that are reoccurring? Okay, and you try to come up with some general statement. You try to come up with some conclusion based on all these things that you're observing. Right? So this concept of taking multiple observations and coming up with a grand conclusion, a general statement, that is what we call inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning. It goes from specific examples, specific observations, to a general broad statement. I forgot why I put this picture here, so never mind that. Now I'm going to give you an example to help you understand. One time when I was at Dollarama, my daughter wanted to buy these like eraser things, like, you know, those erasers that looks like fruits, right? Like a strawberry, banana, whatever. Like, so she got it, and then she was like, "Hey, how much do you think this is, Dad?" Because it doesn't have a price tag on it. And she's like, "Can I get it?" And then I was like, what a great moment to teach her about inductive reasoning. I don't care if you're only in grade 3. Let's do it. Okay. So I took her to the place where she got the eraser and was like, you know what? Let's take a look at other stuff, right? Like, how much is that ruler? And she's like, oh, it says $2. Okay. How much is the stamps over there? And she's like, $2. Okay. Well, what about those paper clips? She's like, $2. And then she had a moment of realization. She was like, oh, this whole wall is $2. And I'm like, you got it, right? So that is an example of inductive reasoning. Okay? I mean, I didn't tell her it's called inductive reasoning. She think I'm crazy. But, you know, the process of doing those kind of thinking, that's inductive reasoning. You're taking a bunch of observations that are related to each other, and then you come up with a conclusion. Okay, you come up with a broad statement. Now, that broad statement, very importantly, might not necessarily be true. Okay, maybe those erasers, because they're so fancy, it costs $4 instead, right? Like, we don't know. But the point is, you are able to come up with a broad statement, okay, based on everything that you've observed. And that's how science works, right? We can only come up with the best conclusion based on the data that we have. When there are new data that suggests otherwise, then we have to modify our conclusion, right? So are we together with the inductive reasoning? Right? You go from, you know, one observation, another observation, many observations, and then you come up with a conclusion, a general statement. Okay. Just gonna pause for a second, see if anyone want to ask anything. Justine asked, is there general statement needs to be the same? Could you clarify what you mean, please? Needs to be
Like,
this.
for example, like in a group, like you made an observation that they're all like, you know, for example, the color gray, are they like, that's the general statement of that, like, observation, or can it be like
Are you
different?
saying, do all these things have to be like the same category? Is that what you mean? Or just come one more time. Let me try to understand one more time. Please go ahead.
like for example, like all of them, they're like all different, but like you observe that all of them are like, for example, gray. Is that the general statement for that, like inductive reasoning?
They are all gray, as in like the color gray?
Yeah, color gray. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let me see if I can give you an example of that. The color gray. Okay. This I don't know if this makes any sense, but let's say I met a new friend, okay, and then I went to their house, and then they invite me to, you know, check out their house, and then I see, oh, the couch is gray in color, the light is gray in color, the wall they painted gray, the carpet is gray, right? And then my conclusion, my general statement is, they must really like the color gray. Right? Does that make sense? Like, so you're taking all these little observations, yeah, and then you make
Yeah,
a conclusion, right? Okay.
thank you, sir.
Yep, no problem. Yeah, I'll give you guys another example, and more of like a biology context, right? So let's say you look at the fly, okay, and you can see it under the microscope. These are actual cells from the fly, and you're like, okay, this fly is made up of cells. Okay, and then you look at the fish cell and you're like, oh, fish is made up of cells. Okay, tree is made up of cells, mushroom is made up of cells, bird is made up of cells. What's the general statement here? What's the conclusion?
They're all like living
Yeah.
organisms.
They are
Okay,
made of, they are all made up of cells.
okay, yeah. Day as in what's day? Can you I think both of you have part of it correct. Let's put them together, right? What is made up of cells?
Living organisms.
Yeah, you got it, right? So living things, right? Living things are made of cells. Is that okay? Right? So you look at different observations and then you come up with a general statement. That's inductive reasoning. Please ask away if you have any questions. Okay, most people they think they're okay at this point, and then when I go to the next slide and I teach the deductive reasoning, the opposite, and then things start to get like all weird. Okay, so it's just up to this point. Anything you guys want to clarify? All right, good job. So the opposite of inductive reasoning is deductive reasoning. Okay, let me just go back to the note here for a second. Okay, so you know, back to the Dollarama example, right? Like, you know, she looked at the wall and she's like, okay, what did I say? Like, I forgot what I said, but like pencils are $2, right? And then rulers are $2, right? Stamps are $2, right? And then they see a bunch of things that are $2. And then what was the conclusion? Everything on this wall or shelf, whatever you want to call it, are $2, right? So what do we call this logic? Inductive reasoning, right? That's what we've learned so far. But that still hasn't answered her question, right? Her question was how much are the fancy erasers, right? Okay. So then this is a real story, right? She took the next step and she's like, so the erasers are $2 as well, right? So that is like taking this general statement and then you are applying it to a specific case, right? The erasers are $2. Okay, and I'm just making this up. Maybe on the wall there is something else. Maybe there are some like paper clips or something that is also missing a label, right? Then one can logically assume that paper clips are $2, right? So this part where you are taking a general statement and you're applying to specific cases, that is called deductive reasoning. Okay, so it's useful, and we use this every day. Okay, in our lives. Okay, we just don't call it inductive deductive reasoning, but it's part of how we navigate through the world every day, right? So I'm sure some of you are parents here, right? And today is the first day of school. So unless this is like your very, very first day of school for your kid, the kid is going to school for the first time. Congratulations, by the way, if that's the case. Otherwise, like if you have been taking your kid to school like for the past, I don't know, 5-6 years, then you know, first day of school is hectic. Okay, a lot of traffic. Everybody's gonna be swarming to the school. So what do you want? What do you need to do? You need to get out of the door early, right, to avoid the crowd, right, so you don't get stuck in traffic or something like that. That's example of inductive and deductive reasoning. How so? Okay, so like last year, first day of school, oh, lots of people. Okay, the year before that, first day of school, lots of people. The year before that, first day of school, lots of people. What's the general conclusion? First day of school, always lots of people. And then for deductive reasoning, today is the first day of school. From previous experience, lots of people. I should get out of the door early to avoid the crowd. That is deductive reasoning. Okay, and there are countless examples of everyday lives of how you use these, you know, hand in hand to help you make decisions, right? Okay, Now back to our PowerPoint slide here, right? So the biology example is that all organisms are made of cells. So an example of deductive reasoning would be if all organisms are made of cells, and if ants is a living organism, then an ant will consist of cells, right? You're applying the general statement to a new situation, to the ant, okay? If you discover a new living organisms, even if without looking at them at the composition under a microscope, you can assume it's made up of cells as long as it's living, right? Okay. This is an example of an application question on test. I will guarantee to put this question on your first quiz. Okay, I mean the orders might be different. Okay, so don't memorize like, oh, it's D and then you just blindly choose D on the quiz. It's gonna be same question, but the order is gonna be different. Okay, so take a look at it, see if you can pick out an answer. I'll let you read it first, and then I will launch the poll in a bit. All right, let me launch the poll for you. And let me know what you think the answer is. There's only one correct answer, by the way. Okay, just pick something. If you're not sure, you can choose E to let me know that you are not sure. All right, thank you for those of you who have participated. So that's the result from the class. And remember, like on the test, right? Not all of the questions will be like this, right? Like you will just have a few application questions. So like, don't freak out. Let's take a look at this. Which of the following is an example of deductive reasoning? Okay, the first thing you have to figure out in this question is like, what does deductive reasoning mean? Is it going from specific to general or general to specific? I'll give you a moment to think about that in your head. Right? Which way is it? Right? So deductive, sorry, go ahead.
General to specific.
That's right. This goes from general to specific. All right, so let's take a look at some of the choices here. All viruses require a host to replicate. Okay, so that's a general statement, right? Because it says all, right? All viruses require a host to replicate. Well, that might be it. Okay, but let's not jump to conclusion. Let's read the rest of them. Number 2, COVID-19, HPV, Ebola, influenza are viruses. You don't actually have to know what they mean, right? Like these are just different examples of viruses. They require a host to replicate. Therefore, all viruses require a host to replicate. This is going from specific to general, right? Which means this is inductive, right? So that's not what we are looking for, all right? So for those of you who have chose this option, I hope I have convinced you why this is not the answer. Right? This is inductive. We are looking for general to specific. Next one, all viruses require a host to replicate. Okay, so that sounds exactly like A. Maybe that's the right answer. Let's put it there for now. And lastly, COVID-19 is a virus and it requires a host to replicate. Ebola is a virus, therefore it also requires a host to replicate, right? You are just going from one example to another example. There is no generalization. You're not applying a general statement to a specific case. So this is neither inductive or deductive. So that only leaves us with two things, okay? I'm just gonna read it. All viruses requires a host to replicate. COVID-19 is a virus. It must require a host to replicate. All viruses requires a host to replicate. COVID-19 requires a host to replicate. Therefore, COVID-19 is a virus. They sound very similar, right? Okay. But if you look at the logic, one of them is incorrect. Okay, let me show you why. So here it says all viruses require a host to replicate. You see the sentence structure? Viruses requires host to replicate. And then COVID-19 is a virus. It must require a host to replicate. So you see, this is like same order of logic, right? Viruses require host to replicate. COVID-19 viruses require a host to replicate. That's correct. That is the correct answer. Let's take a look at what's wrong with the other one. All viruses requires a host to replicate. But then the logic is backwards in the next sentence. COVID-19 require a host to replicate. Therefore, COVID-19 is a virus. You see, the logic is backwards, right? So it's not correct. Now you might have a hard time seeing why this is incorrect, but let me switch this up with another example. Watch. Okay. Instead of all virus, I say all birds. All birds have wings. Is that okay? That's a true statement, right? So all birds, all virus. Sorry, all birds, all virus have wings. So instead of like COVID-19, I'm gonna say bees. Bees have wings, right? So you see the green part goes first, right? Have wings. Therefore what? What's my conclusion? Help me out, please. What's the conclusion? Yeah, therefore bees are birds, right? And obviously that is not true, right? So hopefully you can see why this is not true, right? In order for the inductive reasoning to be correct, right, it must be presented in the same order, right? If the color code helps you, look, yellow, green, the next sentence structure must also be yellow, green. It cannot be backwards, okay? So for that person, whoever you are, the single person who got it right, good job. And for the rest of you, that's okay, right? Hopefully you understand what the answer is right now. And when you see the exact same question, which will be on your first quiz, I guarantee it, you will know how to choose the correct answer. Okay, but don't just blindly choose A, right? Like I said, it's going to be scrambled, right? Any question about this question before we do one last thing, and then we will end the class. There are more practice on the practice quiz, right? So you can go ahead and try that out. If you need some more clarification, all right, and feel free to email me if you need more explanation. Now, I just want to spend the last couple minutes. I know we're tight on time, but I just want to spend the last couple minutes filling in this chart for you, hoping that it will help you understand a little bit more. Okay. So this is the study guide. If you haven't printed out, please consider doing that next time. And if you don't have a printer, that's okay as well. Just do this in your notebook or something. So for induction, the definition, right? Induction or inductive reasoning, same thing. The definition is to create a general statement, a general conclusion based on various related observations. Okay. If you want, you can create your own example of inductive reasoning, and then you can send it to me. You can email me, and I'll tell you if you got it. Okay, it doesn't have to be fancy. It could be just everyday examples. So I'll give you another everyday example. Okay, you know, Daniel got COVID from the party. Okay. And then second observation, make up your favorite name, and then you say got COVID from the party. Okay. Got COVID from the party, right? Got COVID from the party. So what's the general statement? What's the conclusion? If four friends
They
of yours,
all got COVID from the party.
that's right, they all got COVID from the party, right? Okay. Sorry, I shouldn't say got COVID from the party. I should say got COVID after the party. Okay, after the party. Okay. So the conclusion is like they got COVID, or you can say someone has COVID. Someone had COVID at the party, right? Now, deduction is to apply a general statement to a specific case to make a prediction. Okay. Like the prediction about how much those erasers are, like the prediction that this new living organism is made up of cells. And in this case, right, after this conclusion, I can say, I went to the party. I should get tested, right? Okay, so this here, going from the observations to the general statement, that's induction. Applying it to yourself, in this case, that would be deduction. Okay. So that's it for the first class. Thank you so much for your participation and coming to class. I will see you all again on Thursday at 8:30. Sorry, at 12:30. Okay, 12:30 p.m. And I will be posting an announcement on eCentennial shortly, and it will tell you, where to find the lecture recordings. It will tell you where to download the Lockdown browser, and so on and so forth. Okay. If you have questions between now and Thursday, feel free to email me. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your week, and I will see you all in 2 days. Thank
Have a good
you.
day, sir.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye, sir.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.